Next at the Purpose Power Summit, we've got Verizon Chairman and CEO Hans Vestberg. It might seem preposterous that one man can motivate 130,000 people in dozens of different roles, but with a well-crafted statement of purpose, a deep commitment by the C-suite, and one or two tricks, that's exactly what he's done, guaranteeing a more seamless digital world for the rest of us. Hans, thanks so much for being here with us today. You came to Verizon, you became CEO, chairman, but you arrived with already an understanding of how important purpose was or is to businesses. Where did that come from?
First of all, I mean, when you come into a new company, especially a company like Verizon that has been very successful, you start thinking about how do you bring your whole team with you. And we, in the beginning, we made it very clear how to articulate sort of what we bring from the past, what has been great things, and what we want to do in the future. In that conversation, it became very important for us to rally around I call it the cultural operating system. That means that you have a purpose, you have values, internal and external values, and you have leadership philosophies. That for me is the cultural system that's going to support the strategy you have as a company. So for us, it became important very early on to define where we want, what we aspired for in the future. And that's where the purpose came from. And we built it around the 4 stakeholders as well. So we can actually, everyone understands that we're serving 4 stakeholders: society, customers, employees, and shareholders. And that was important. But I guess historically for me, I'm Swedish, I come from Sweden. Worked a lot with value-based sort of organization, worked a lot in team sports, trying to find the purpose why we're there and how we fight together. And not only that, how we also do it together, meaning the values of the organization becomes equally important. So I think that was what I brought to Verizon when we started what we call the Verizon 2.0. It's probably 2.5 years ago now.
To be clear, that value proposition is that we create the networks that move the world forward. Succinct, understandable, but Verizon has lots of businesses, 130,000 some odd employees, I believe. How do you make sure everyone gets that message and carries it forward in what they do every day?
We wanted it, first of all, to have a clear purpose that everybody can remember and they can all relate to it. And networks for us is what we do every day. It's physical networks, or it's people networks, or networks of people. That's what we build every day, either in our brands of Verizon Media Group with our Yahoo and AOL, which we now later on is going to divest. But anyhow, it was part of that. And the networks that we build around. So it was very important to relate that. But we also understood that that's very easy to do from the top down. So we actually, of course, had an employee movement to really be part of this, the journey on the purpose, the internal values, the external values. And we actually had an idea how to engage everyone. And we started with the purpose coin. We had a coin, it's only 300 coins. We gave it to the top 300 first, and they needed to give it to someone within a couple of weeks that is actually living up to the purpose and the internal values.
I think it's important here actually to say that we're talking about a physical coin, right?
Yeah,
not a token.
Not like this, yeah. It's a physical coin that we start to pass on in organizations when people were living up to the purpose, they were living up to our values. We have core values in our company that we stand up for, and we start passing up, and we can follow, because we had the QR codes on, so we can follow how these coins are moving around in our organization. And of course, it started high up. Now it's all across the globe, different units being passed along. And it was a way to see that we have an employee movement at the same time, supporting the values of the company and the purpose of the company. That was just one thing. We did many other things, but that was concrete how we did it in the beginning to get everybody to be part of it.
And so this actually originating in the C-suite, but I think I read a story the other day where someone in retail, and I think this is one of the remarkable things about what you've done, is that you've instilled purpose, not just in the C-suite and not just in high-level people, but people who are working Poles and people who are in retail and in so many different places, right? But I think I just saw that someone in one of your retail outlets actually just got one of the coins.
Absolutely. No, the whole intention, I'm out visiting stores or field engineers. We know about somebody done a great job. You pass the coin. You pass it also. You need to make a written description why you give the coin to someone, why you believe they have been part of the purpose and the values of the company, and so they know why they got it. And when they pass it along, they need to do the same. So you just imagine the subset of information we have and how these coins are moving around. They've been moving around for 1.5 years right now in the company. And of course, it's a great pride to keep the coin. You can have it for a couple of weeks or a month. So of course, because you know you're part of the purpose and where we're going. So it was just one idea. We had many others. But for us, we wanted to be tangible, not only for the top leaders. We wanted it to be a purpose-driven company, aiming for these 4 stakeholders with clear North Star for all our stakeholders. We have a 5-year plan for our shareholders, for our employees, for our customers, and society, what we want to do in all 4 of them, hanging together in what we call the Verizon 2.0.
So when you get this purpose, it provides for you guardrails, not only how to act and how to engage with stakeholders, but does it define where you go as a business?
Yeah, it does define where we go with the business, because if you think about the 3 pillars in every business you have the purpose, which basically say why we exist and why we're here. And then you have the strategy, what we do, and then the culture, which basically tells you how we do it. And you know, that's for me the cultural system you need to have, because you cannot live with one out of the other. So that's why it defines definitely how we act, because we have our values, core values, in the company. We call it the credo. How we deal with our friends and colleagues, how we deal with customers, how we respect everyone, diversity. All this is super important. Also, how you do it, and that's the culture barrier that sets that up.
And is it fair to say that it also tells you what businesses you shouldn't be in? I mean, does the purpose that you have actually has it led to, for example, recent divestitures?
I haven't led to anything, but of course, when you think about the purpose, it has to cover everything we're doing every day, and where each and every employee feel that I understand where we're going as a company. I'm a part of that purpose, even though you might, I started my career, checking travel expenses. I always start with that example there. So even if you're checking travel expenses, you're checking travel expense for somebody doing network design or engineering. So you're part of creating the networks that they create the future. So it's really much that everybody should feel that they're part of that.
What is the one thing that everyone who's here today listening to us right now, what do you think is most valuable for them to understand, that once you lock on to a purpose, how to make sure that it actually gets continued on, right? I've been parts of lots of organizations that have had a lot of well-meaning strategies that often never go anywhere after they're first articulated.
No, you're right. And that's why this holistic system becomes important. And you need to be perseverant, and you need to actually do it for a long time, so people understand the pillars that you have in this system. And of course, the purpose is the overall guiding place you're going to, but you have a strategy supporting that. And then, of course, you have the culture around it. And the only way I would say in today's world, where you have so many stakeholders, you have so many so diverse employee base, customer base, you need to have this intact, because that leads you in decision making. It leads you how you act. It leads you how to do things. I mean, I can take one example. When we started, when the COVID started, which of course was horrible and hit our employees and friends and customers, just horrible. We always said that we don't compromise between the stakeholders. We have the employees, customers, shareholders, and the society. In that moment, we said that, no, we're going to change. We're going to set an agenda every morning when we meet. We start talking about the safety and health of our employees. That's number 1 priority. Number 2, we keep the networks up for our customers, because it's more important than ever right now. And then, of course, we need to do right for our society in these times, as well as for our shareholders. But the priority was different. And that was coming from our work in Verizon 2.0, that we had that framework. We knew where we could also change it because of circumstances that we actually could never expect or see happening.
And you feel that that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't had such a strong purpose. That, like, this
No.
is an example, a real world example of how having that purpose can guide you in unusual circumstances.
Absolutely. The framework helped us in that moment to see clearly how we want to operate and how we prioritize our decision making, our actions, our resources. That was clear, very clear from that part. So I would say we were lucky. We at least had more than 1 year since we launched Verizon 2.0 when we came in to this moment of the COVID-19, middle of 2020.
Just getting back to the coin for 1 second, I think it was Alan Mullally who would have a printed business card with sort of his commandments on them that he'd hand out to everybody so the whole team would remember. You had a coin, and that sort of circulates in a rare fashion, making it even more valuable than a business card. Do you think that physical item actually helped people? And do you think this is something we should all think about when we're developing our purpose, that there's something tactile that actually helps us keep in our head what we're thinking about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you need an employee movement that they feel equally committed and part of the purpose and understand why we're here and how we're acting and how we're doing things. That's extremely important. To have the top team knowing and remembering the purpose is not good enough. We need to have all of that. And that's also why we measure our employees much more frequent than we've ever done before, to see that, do you understand why you're here? Is your management supporting you? Do you understand the purpose of the company? You need to measure it all the time as well to see that you're staying current and you have a connection with the whole organization. And of course, Verizon is a large organization. As I said in the beginning, there's 130 plus thousand employees in very diverse places and very diverse backgrounds. You need to see that you actually keep it together with something. And that's where the sort of the big sort of overseeing of a cultural operating system with a purpose, internal, external values, and leadership philosophies is putting a sort of a frame around our strategy, how we operate.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that I understand that in some respects you're coming from top down, but you also have to activate the middle and the bottom. And what goes into that? So
when we launched this Verizon 2.0, we came up also with 7 different leadership philosophies. And we decided to train all the leaders in the company, that is more than 15,000. Actually, what does it mean? How do you act? Because not all leaders are the same, but the principles are the same of what is important in the leadership. So we train first all leaders in the organization, and then we train all the employees. All employees had a chance to understand what are the leadership philosophies, how does it hang together with the purpose, and all of that. So basically, we trained we were 150,000 when we were doing it, basically employees, when we did that training, in order to see that everybody understood and had a conversation about it, purpose, leadership philosophies, and how we do it. And then, of course, you measure at the same time. So you see that you move the whole movement in the right direction constantly. And of course, there are mishaps and things that you need to correct all the time, but that's how we have done it. And we are some 2.5 years into it, and it's far away from finished. You have much more to do, but we have the framework there.
So how do you go forward now? What happens next? How do you not lose traction?
I think that for me is that you put equally much focus on all the stakeholders in every meeting, in every gathering, in every strategy. That's how I learned that you don't lose focus. I mean, it's very easy to be super focused only on customers for a while, or employees only. But it is the things hanging together. And I think that's what we try to do all the time, and that's why we have short-term goals for all the stakeholders, and we have long-term goals, and we have metrics to see that we're meeting them, and that means also that we will see that we talk about them, we have them in meetings, we discuss them, and that's how you keep it up, and then you see the organization and following and understanding it better.
And whether they're short-term or long-term goals, they're all guided by the philosophy of creating the network that moves us all forward.
Yeah, Absolutely. That's the basis, is that we create the networks that move the world forward. That's sort of the basis of everything we're doing. But ultimately, the whole value system around it becomes equally important, how we act and how we do that. And then, of course, our employees feel that I'm part of it, and that's the movement we call internally. And we are more, I think during the pandemic, we also decided to be much more closer to our employee base. And we, in the beginning of the pandemic, we understood that we have so many layers in the company, given the size, and with so many changes and so much risk involved for our customers and employees, we decided basically to host a 30-minute live show every lunch. We started in the beginning of March last year. We ran it at least for 7 months, where I was on every day for 30 minutes talking to all the employees. Nowadays, they only invite me every second week or something like that. But it was also a way to connect the purpose, what we're doing, and what was the priorities based on that, to communicate. And some days we didn't have much to say, of course. And we, of course, only said what we're doing, and be safe and be careful and all of that, or call this number if you have a problem. And I think that also connected us even closer to an employee movement. We had days with over 100,000 people looking at the TV show we had, which is, of course, enormous in an employee engagement or movement.
Yeah, astonishing. Such great insight. Hans Vestberg, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott.